it's like you have this whole, and they all have full access to the internet with zero safety
Correct.
restrictions. So like, don't you want some sort of persons with a license and an education and a certification
Who can be
to
held accountable
guide
if
them
they
with
do
that
something
and give them
wrong?
the critical thinking skills to navigate through that
Yeah.
information?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
It drives me nuts. Wyatt, this is why I can't move back, because I would be a fucking school board's
Ah,
nightmare.
you should. You should move back. We need
Nightmare.
more school board nightmares.
Okay, well, hey Wyatt, we're so happy to connect with you again. It's been a while. I'm trying to think of the last time we saw each other, but it's probably been a little bit.
It's been a minute, yeah.
Okay, so Wyatt, where are you living now?
I'm living in Three Forks, but teaching in Bozeman.
Okay, teaching in Bozeman.
Yeah.
You're in the big leagues, big school.
Somehow I made it in, so.
Yeah. And have you always been teaching there, or did you teach a couple other places before you got to Bozeman?
I taught in Wolf Point, Montana, my first year.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I want to say it was Wolf Point, like somewhere really kind of like small.
Yep.
Yeah.
Out in the middle of nowhere. And that was in 2020. They hired me spring of 2020, and nothing was
God.
going on. No big deal.
Yeah.
And so that fall, I started teaching up there, and I went out there for 1 year, and then got a job offer in Three Forks, where I taught for 2 years, and then taught in Bozeman for the last 3. So
Awesome.
yeah,
How big was your class in Wolf Point?
they're class B. So like I was teaching 8th graders predominantly, and I think I would have about 20-ish kids in a room, maybe a little
Okay.
less than. So
Got it.
yeah.
What were you teaching? Were you also doing social studies for 8th grade?
Yeah, I was teaching U.S. history for 8th grade. So, and then I got 1 high school current events class. So,
Nice.
yeah, it was
Sweet.
8th graders
Awesome.
are wild. They're a time.
Yeah. We'll talk too about like your age preferences on students, because I feel like I know what age I could teach and
And
which ones I
everyone
would be like, that would be last on my list. But
exactly. And everyone like has their group that they love. Mine is not middle school. It's also definitely not elementary. Like high school is great, but there's some people who love middle school, and I'm like, you're a saint. I don't know how, but like you're doing the Lord's work. So
yeah. Okay, so everyone who doesn't know, we've got Wyatt Murdoch on the pod today. We're super excited to have you, Wyatt. We all have kind of long-term history. I think at one point we were all somehow in some capacity working for residence life at Montana State. Wyatt, I can't remember, what year did you graduate from MSU?
I graduated in 2020, but I started in 2014.
Okay.
So took a long while, but got there. So
Yeah. And then you were an RA when and where?
I was an RA the fall of 2015 and then into 16 in the freshman apartments.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, you were on like was it the first staff, second staff maybe?
I think it would have been third.
Yeah.
Because fall of 2015 was
remember.
when I was in Gallatin,
Okay. Yeah,
I
because
think.
Oh,
Because we had
gotcha.
overlap there.
You did my rounds. I was taking the RA class. Like you showed me like the rounds, and then
Yes.
Got
you
it.
did my interview.
Yep.
Really?
Yep,
Okay,
yep.
that's funny.
That or the exit interview. I can't remember which one it was. Is one of the interviews. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
Okay.
remember interviewing you, and I remember having you on rounds when that was like for listeners. There, once you're in the RA process, there's like one assignment when you're in the RA class, and you have to go on rounds. So Wyatt went on rounds with me in North in the suites.
Nice.
I came back when I
Yes.
had to come back.
And then Wyatt, were you studying to be a teacher the whole entire time, or I want to know how did you end up? Were you like, you went to school and you're like, I want to be a teacher?
So when I was in high school, I originally wanted to be a vet, and then was told if you can't put animals down every day, don't do that. So I was like, cool. I'm not going to do that.
That's fair.
And then I
That's
come
a
from
fair
a family of
assessment.
teachers. And so like that was kind of the next thing. I was like, oh, that'd be really cool to do. And like my dad always told me that I'd be a really good teacher. And then I decided I didn't want to be poor. So I decided to go into nursing. So my first semester at MSU was nursing. And then the entire time I was doing it, I was like, this is not what I want to do. That's not where my heart's at. I don't
Yeah.
see myself being in a hospital the rest of my life. Like I see myself in a classroom. So I changed directions, and I was already doing a history minor as well. And so I decided to just dive in, and it's been amazing ever since. So yeah.
And then when you were studying to be a teacher, did you know you wanted to like get into the area of kind of the like social studies, government, world history?
Yeah, that was always the stuff that fascinated me in high school. And when I thought about what I would like to teach or what I was passionate about, I was like, if I want to make the world a better place, more equitable,
Yeah.
it starts with history and social studies, just because if we understand where we've been, we can kind of
Yeah.
understand the world we're in now. So that was kind of the drive to go the social studies route. So
That's a really good point. I've never thought of that before. Like, as like a queer person, like where's like your best? Where does it feel like you can make the most impact subject wise? And I've never really thought about that before, but I feel like that's a really, really excellent point. So that's awesome. I don't know if you know this, but my dad was also a world history teacher.
oh, I did not know that.
And
Okay.
so, yeah, so he was a special ed teacher for 10 years, and then he switched over to world history, sociology, and psychology.
Okay.
So, and he taught at Stevensville for like 25 years.
Nice.
So I very much also come from a family and long line of teachers too. So,
And it's
which I think did the opposite for me. I was like, ooh, I
Yep.
don't know if I can do it. And so,
it pushes you
yeah.
in one or two directions. Either like you absolutely know what you're getting yourself into, and so then you're like, oh, I can do this, or you're like, I absolutely do not want to do this. You know, like it gives you a lot of good insight. And I think for me, because my mom was a teacher, and watching her
Yeah.
do what she did, I was like, okay, I think I know what I'm getting myself into, kind of.
yeah. Remind me, where did you grow up?
So I grew up in the Big Hole Valley, which is has two towns in it. Jackson, which has like 25 people. Wisdom like has 100. So the whole valley probably has like maybe 200 people in it. And then I moved over to Ennis when I was in high school.
Okay, so you went to Ennis High School.
Yeah.
And did your mom teach at Ennis or?
She did not. She taught in all like the one-room schoolhouses that were kind of like
Oh,
nearby.
okay.
So, and that's what I grew up
Yeah.
in before going to high school in Ennis. And I went to 1 year in Dillon. So it was weird going to a class size or like a school size of 12 kids to then like K through 8 to then Dillon, which is like 350 kids, and then Ennis, which was only 100 in the high school. So
Yeah.
yeah. So, and now teaching at
Okay.
Bozeman, it feels there's like almost 1,500 kids, I think.
Yeah.
And that it's insane. I don't know all the kids, which just feels super weird. So,
Yeah. So you're at Bozeman High School.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
I'm gonna ask if we can back up just a tiny bit, Isaac, before we get
Yeah.
into the teaching part. Can you, Wyatt? So we had overlap, like in residence life at MSU, and you said you graduated in 2020. Can you tell us a little bit? Because I actually don't necessarily know. Can you tell us a little bit about like your coming out experience? Like when you came out and what that was like? Because I think timeline wise, if I'm assuming, but I think for you and me, it was fairly similar timeline wise. So I just I'm like curious your experience and what that looked like.
yeah.
You guys are both in the same Facebook group. You guys both showed you went.
On it, like
Present.
I'm literally in my
Present.
mind. I'm like it's like
Here.
it's like class of XYZ of like MSU students coming out. Yeah.
You coming out class?
Yeah.
Well, if you guys know, I was held back for many years actually in that coming out. Routinely. I was like a 6th or 7th year senior.
We're all on our own journey, right? But I do think our timelines probably sync up pretty well. So basically, when I graduated high school in 2014. And I remember in high school, like having a conversation with myself of like, am I straight? And what's wild about me having this conversation with myself, everyone else knew, like everybody else could tell from a mile away that I was. And for the most part, I would say that like a lot of people were pretty kind, like my close friends were, and they never really brought it up. Like they were just like, he'll figure it out. Or they didn't know, they had no idea, but generally people knew. So yeah, I think through high school, I was kind of having this conversation with myself. And then when I got to college, I was like, maybe I should find out. So I went on a date with a guy and used Tinder, the apps. They're great.
Wow. Okay.
And
Wait, you had access?
Ahead of
you
me.
were
Way
Tinder?
ahead of me.
What year was that?
that was my freshman year of college, to clarify. So yeah, so my freshman year of college, I like went on a date with a guy. One thing led to another. Like we kind of like hung out, and obviously the physicality part of that was there. And then I was like, oh, this is actually really fun. Like, this is a good time. And then I remember going on a couple dates with some girls, and like, it was kind of there, but not really. Like, so I was in this space of like being bi, which apologies to all bi people of being like, I'm bi, and then being like, oh no, I'm not, like later. But I remember my sophomore year when I was an RA, I went on a date with this girl, and I'd like seriously been seeing a guy like that summer, and things didn't work out. But I remember going on a date with a girl, and we like cuddled for 3 hours at my place, like watching a movie, and I had no interest in anything. And I remember texting a friend being like, okay, and I'd come out to like a lot of friends at that point of being bi at the time. And I texted a buddy of mine. I was like, hey, if I cuddled with someone and had no interest in anything, like other than just like hanging out, like what does that say? And he was like, dude, I think you're gay. And I was like, cool. I just needed someone to say it to me. So yeah,
Just
so
need someone to
really
say.
that fall of 2015 is when I was like, okay, I'm definitely gay. And so to backtrack a little bit further, I remember that school year, the first person I came out to was Andy Gregory. When I was his resident, like we were really close at that point in time.
Yeah.
And we were on our trip to Target, and I was going through kind of a quasi breakup, but like with the first guy I'd ever like really fallen for. And
Yeah.
I just remember being in such a place that I couldn't talk about it, and I didn't know how to. And so finally, I just looked at him. I was like, "Hey, I have something to tell you. I've been seeing a guy. We broke up, even though we really weren't dating, but it feels like a breakup. And here's all this." And so like that was a huge way to be able to like tell someone who's someone that I could trust that to that level. Yeah. So then kind of like slowly started coming out to other people and got more and more comfortable with myself. And then finally told my parents, which that's a whole much longer conversation. They were very, it's been a journey, but I will say that they have always been super loving and super supportive. It just took them some time to get there. So
Yeah.
no faults to them
Sure.
at all. Like they did the best they could growing up in very rural places. I think they were young adults in the 80s. So like their concept of being gay was like, you're going to die. And that's just what they wanted from me. So, and some religious aspects, but otherwise they've been great. Like my whole extended family has been really supportive and awesome. So luckily that's, the coming out side of things has been good overall. So I count myself lucky for that. So
Honestly, like Isaac and I both did an episode on the podcast about coming out, and that's
okay.
like really impressive. Just because all three of us, I feel like we're in semi-similar situations in terms of like where we grew up, then going to MSU, and ours involved like years of secrecy. So and like from what you're saying, it sounds like you kind of just like were like, okay, I mean, I need to figure this out. I'm having these thoughts, and just kind of like went through the motions of like, okay, go on dates with guys, go on dates with girls. Whereas like, I mean, Isaac went on no dates with guys, but considered like hooked up with a
Just the
guy
one.
for a year and a half in secrecy before anything ever came out. So yeah, no, that's just like I feel like that's really impressive because it's just so vastly different than the way that Isaac and I kind of approached it.
It's
and
so very,
methodical,
like, okay. And then asking your friends to be like, this happened. What do you think that means? And that, like, it was so like open and on it. Like, it's very Wyatt. Of everything I know about you, Wyatt, I think part of the reason we were so excited to interview, obviously with your career path, and I think everything that I'm sure makes you an excellent teacher. But I think kind of that like open and honesty of being like, this is what I'm seeing and experiencing. What do you guys think?
Right.
I love it. So it's great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, there were some moments that were, I remember like coming to terms with myself and like crying just because I was like, what does that mean for my future? Like, and I remember having a conversation with my dad being like, well, we just never pictured this for you. Like this wasn't our plan for you. And I remember looking back at him and just being like, I didn't picture this for me either, but here we are.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
Which, and again, looking back, like I always knew, like even from when I was a very little kid, like I remember knowing, but just being like, shove that deep down. But luckily, I've been very lucky to have amazing friends and family who were very supportive of me being authentic, and I think gave me space to feel like a sense of belonging just for who I was, even without that information, like being gay. And so when I finally came out, they're like, yeah, cool, great. Anything else?
Yeah.
Great, awesome. So like, and again, I know that is not everyone's experience, and I'm very lucky in Montana to have had that. So I think they made that finding my authenticity way easier. So
That's so fascinating. And I think too, I'm interested because we've done an episode too on like being out at work and like the coming out process and things like that at work. But I think there's like so much more gravity around that when you're a teacher. So I would love to like, I want to dive into like, what was your process as you started your professional journey into this world that everyone has eyes on, that everyone's involved in, that everyone's has been a teacher, knows a teacher, been through school. Like there's so many people that think they're experts on it. And so I want to hear just about like, as you started your career, what was it like? What was your process? What was your method for like eventually coming out, being like, I'm not going to come out. I'm going to, I want to hear it all.
It's, as you're saying that, I'm like flashing back to so many different moments. Cause that's the thing about coming out is like, you're never done. At least in this time period, like everyone just expects you to be straight. And so when you're not, it's a continual process. Right. And so when I moved to Wolf Point, which for context, for any listeners who don't know where Wolf Point, Montana is, it's in the northeast corner of Montana. It's on an Indian reservation, the Fort Peck Indian Reservation. And when I was going to move up there, and again, it was 2020, I was lucky just to find a job at that time period. And so they hired me without even, I'd never been to Wolf Point. They hired me over a Zoom call, which was really exciting. And so I get there, but before I got there, all my friends and family were like, you're a gay little white boy. Like you're moving up to a place with high trauma, high high poverty, and unfortunately, I should double check this fact. You guys can double check me on this, but I think Wolf Point has had the highest murder rate per capita in the U.S. at different time periods.
Oh, gotcha.
So they were
Yeah.
like, "You're going to get murdered," and I'm like, "At least I'm getting paid." I don't know. So moving up there, I was a little nervous, but I was also like, I'm just gonna make the best of it. I'm really excited. I got there, and obviously I didn't come out right away, but the community really like took me in. I
Yeah.
made a lot of connections with my students just by trying to like level with them as I'm a new teacher. I remember this one girl looking at me the first week of school being like, "We've gotten teachers fired before," and I was like, "Neat. Here's your homework." But worked really hard to build a relationship with her. To later on in the semester, she looked at me one time and was like, no, there was a kid talking over me, and she turned around. She's like, "If you don't shut the F up, I'm going to find you in the parking lot." So, and that was an 8th grader. So she was really
Oh my
scary,
gosh.
but I got her on my side and it works. Classroom management. So a little bit of that context to say, like, I worked really hard to build relationships with the people in my building and the community.
Yeah.
And I think when I finally did kind of like come out to like some staff members who I had gotten close with, and like some students I had a pride flag in my room, so kids figured it out pretty quick, but they were just like, "Cool, you're from a traumatized community. We're a traumatized community, like historically. Come into our fold, small child." Like, so that was really cool to like kind of see this intersectionality of like, they're like, "We get it, you get it.
Yeah.
Let's work together." So I also think there's an aspect of like people had a lot more on their plates to where parents didn't really care what was going on in the schoolhouse. Unfortunately, their parents weren't as involved. Admin also wasn't super involved. There was an incident where a teacher did say some really transphobic things to a trans student. So, and there was a bunch of backlash, like the students backlash against this teacher. They're like, "We don't do that here. Like, that's inappropriate." So
Yeah.
I offered to do a safe zone training from MSU. As a safe zone trainer at MSU during my time. Thank you. Thank you.
Nice job, Wyatt.
So I offered to do that, and our superintendent was like, "No, we can't do that." And I was like, "Why not?"
Yeah.
And she's like, "All of our professional development days we've had planned out." And I was like, "Neat, okay." She's like, "Maybe next year." And then my principal was like, "We planned those a day ahead. Whatever, you can do it." And I was like, "Awesome, okay, great."
Yeah.
So I ended up doing it, and like there were some people you would never have guessed they asked like the best questions. They're like, "Wait, how does this work?
Yeah.
Can I understand this identity? Can I like?" They had the best questions, and there was no malice from them. It was just ignorance.
Like
And they
ill
just
intent. Yeah.
never had the opportunity to learn or ask these questions. And so to like do that, and again, I was trying to speak for transgender people, which I'm not, but I did my best to like try and represent them in that space too. But there were a lot of people who like you could see the light bulbs going off of like, "Oh my God, if I was going
Yeah.
through that, this is what it would be like." And so in that process, a lot of people, if they didn't know before, they knew that I was gay then. But I remember this one woman, it was her 40th year teaching. When it was my first year teaching, we shared a wall, classroom walls. And I just remember her sobbing that year. And she was tough. She was a tough woman. I respected the hell out of her. But I remember her crying because a family member of hers had gone through some pretty hard times. And she's like, "I finally get it now."
Oh, yeah.
And she was like, "I never understood it to this level. And I am just feeling a lot of things." So it was cool to be able to do that. And I feel like it at least established a baseline for teachers just be like, "Look, I'm going to teach every kid that comes into my classroom and try and support them the best I can." And that was
Yep.
the goal. I was like, I don't care if you're using the most inclusive of language. I just want you to support every kid that walks in your room, regardless if they're gay, trans, straight, whatever it might be, right? So just giving them an opportunity to learn was a huge thing.
Yeah, I feel like it's tough because it requires a lot of vulnerability, and I think I think it's a common misconception about Montana where it's like not necessarily this like outward bigotry or this like completely anti. It's more so of like the quiet, let's not talk about it because I don't know how to talk about it. So I don't want to be the person that makes a mistake, or I don't want to be the person that does it wrong, or I don't want to be the person that offends someone.
Exactly.
And so while I think that's probably the better of the two, it still is a type of it's a type of discrimination by just like doing nothing.
It gives
sense.
space
Yeah.
for
It's a type of it's like marginalizing people by just being like "Zzz."
Yep. And I also think it stems from maybe you guys experienced it different, but growing up in Montana, I remember a very libertarian, not in the crazy way, kind of, "I'm going to do my thing.
Yeah.
You do your thing. Just don't tell me how to do my thing." And
Yep.
and again, I think as you pointed out, like that's kind of, it's not great, but it at least gives space for like, well, I guess I'll be able to do my thing then. And no one's going to do that. That is not the case in Montana anymore. There's a lot of people who are very much like, "You're going to do it this way." I'll also back up to just to give context for listeners. Safe Zone is trainings on how to be a more inclusive person, whether it's student, faculty member at the university. It was a way to like learn about LGBTQIA issues and different levels. Got you like different things. So in terms of like you could have like a little safe space sticker in your office or whatever. So it was really good trainings. I know the RAs did it a lot, and students could do it as well. So yeah.
Just kind of like a follow-up. Do you think your approach as you've been at 3 or 4 different schools now?
3 different schools now. 3 different. Yep.
Do you feel like as you continue on, like, and come to new schools and stuff, your approach has changed at all? Or do you have an approach? Does it depend on the school system? Like how have you, like, I don't know, gone about that?
So that's a perfect segue into this other story, which I'll try and keep just a little bit shorter. But I think after Wolf One being like, oh, like, cool, I can do these things and just make it normalized, it's going to be okay. And so when I moved to Three Forks, it was I think the first month of school, and I had my freshmen doing this project where they had to do a presentation on an issue going on in the world presently. I was kind of teaching history backwards. So this one group of kids were doing their presentation on human sex trafficking, which was in the textbook. I was like, yeah, sure, if it's in the textbook, you guys can cover it, so go for it. And it was in that chapter. This one group of boys did that presentation, and it was honestly pretty great until it got to the very end. They ended their slideshow with a picture of 2 men kissing. And I was just like, no, that's super inappropriate. And I had started out just by being like, hey, and at this point I was not out in any capacity. I knew that Three Forks was a little bit more conservative, so I didn't put a pride flag out, just kind of like test the waters. And anyway, so I looked at that group of boys and I was like, hey, that's super inappropriate. Why do you think that was related to the content of your presentation? And this one boy, who was the ringleader of the group, looked at me and said, it's just a joke, man. And I was like, well, it's not funny. Jokes only work if everybody's laughing. No one's laughing right now. And he's like, whatever, man. And I was like, ooh, okay. I was like, so you've offended me. I'm a gay man. How do you think I feel right now? And you could have heard like a pin drop in the room. And this kid turned like white as a ghost. And I think it was the first, from what I've heard from other teachers, this kid had never apologized for anything, but would always do stuff like that. And I think it was the first time he'd ever been called out like that. So later he came and found me and apologized. He was like, I am so sorry. I did not mean to offend you. And I was like, it's okay, but like, that's super not allowed. And you need to think about how you impact other people. The next day, my principal comes in and is like, you came out, like you outed yourself to a classroom of kids. And I was like, well, here's the story. He's like, I don't care about the story. You could be run out of this town. You need to keep your head down, teach from the textbook, do not rock the water. And so in that moment, I was like, cool, I could be fired for being gay. This is really fun. I will give my principal a little bit of grace. I think he was trying to tell me how to protect myself. But in that moment, that's not how it felt. Like, it was just like, cool, you're threatening me on the behalf of the community is kind of what you're doing. So the rest of the year was pretty rough. Anytime when I taught about the Holocaust, I talked about each group that the Nazis persecuted. So I talked about, obviously, the Jewish people, talked about the Roma, people with disabilities, and I did a day talking about the Pink Triangle, the what happened to queer and LGBTQ people in the camps. And I remember teaching that first period. And then a coworker came in and was like, you cannot teach that again. Like, I don't know what you just taught, but we just got so many phone calls. And I was like, oh my God. And the superintendent was just down the hall from me, her office was. And I remember her walking by and just glaring at me. And I was like, cool, this is really fun. So we had a meeting later in her office, and she was going through my curriculum, and she was like, oh, you haven't done anything wrong. Like, you've spent time on each different group. You weren't just talking about this one thing. She's like, you're doing fine. And I was like, yeah, it'd have been nice if you would given me that grace prior to just assuming I did the wrong thing. So Three Forks was very different compared to Wolf Point, where I got a lot of pushback for being who I was, for trying to teach anything that's accurate history, right? I'm like, this happened. I'm not pushing an agenda. This is what happened, right? And so ever since then, to answer your question, I give you that context to say, now that I teach in Bozeman, which is much more accepting and pro many different things. I wouldn't even say pro. It's just, if it's factual, whatever, like, we're here to support kids and we're here to support our teachers. I've definitely, like, if kids ask me, then I say something, but otherwise I try and just I test the waters very carefully, which sucks because it shouldn't matter. But yeah, that was a really traumatic experience to be told that I could be run out of a town.
Right. Yeah. I just felt like I always go back and forth, and I work in Seattle, and like at my earlier jobs, I just feel like I always go back and forth because I feel like you kind of have to choose what path you're going to take. You're like, I'm either just going to act as I would normally if someone asks, then I guess I'll say something, but not necessarily like make it completely known, like my sexuality. Or are you gonna like go the other path and be like, for lack of a better term, like be this poster child for the gays and be like, here I am, and like try to push the narrative forward or like progress. And I think that's like a tough thing to decide internally, and it may change too. Like sometimes with some jobs you may be like, sure, that then I feel like I'm confident I can do this. So other jobs I feel like you can have like little interactions where you're like, ooh, like I don't know, like based on that I don't know if I should necessarily be like way out there. I don't know, like and I just it's such a tough thing to do. And just like you said, like coming out, you're never done coming out. Every time, even now, I'm like, I've been 10 years, I've worked for 10 years since my graduation, new jobs, a new role. It's like, here we go. Like it's going to somehow come up. And the first time I still feel it, like the first time I say like my husband, like whatever, it's just like, it just happens.
Yeah. And you're constantly, I think this is something that straight people don't get. Maybe women do, but I don't know. And I don't want to make a blanket statement either, but it's a sense of safety.
I do it all the time.
It's a sense of safety that you don't, because you're always testing to be like, am I safe in this space? Am I safe here? Is this going to be like, am I going to be fired from my job? Which technically is illegal, but like as a teacher, until you're tenured, you can be non-renewed for any reason. So like they could have been like, we don't have to give you a reason why we're firing you, but you know what it is. And you
or you
never
don't
know.
and you just sit there and you continue to wonder, right? Like that's also the challenge. I feel like is just like the future of what microaggressions am I going to have to work through that I don't even know are happening. And it's because I divulged this piece of information,
Right.
So but in the back you're just like, oh, I just did it, it just went out there. And then like it's also overcoming your own biases of me being like, now this person has this information and history has taught me not to trust them with it. And that's it. And even though that's not right, and like I'm always trying to like get over that, but I'm like, I'm already thinking of like every future interaction I have with this person. Is there a little piece of this? There is either some sort of like microaggression, but even in a pro way where they're like overcorrecting in a way because they know this piece of information about you. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you or have you had people come out to you in the field or like confide in you? Because I could also see that being a thing where like, here's a gay teacher. This is a safe person to talk to.
I think kids know that there's some boundaries. I also try and make some boundaries too. Like maybe this is a bad way to lead in this part of the conversation, but like also as a teacher, because like eyes are on me, I'm like, it'd be like if I was a straight teacher and a female student, I'm like, there need to be boundaries and gaps here.
Yeah.
And so I'm there to support those kids, but I'm also like within reason. Right. And so, I don't think I've ever had any students like come out to me specifically, but like they let it be known in other ways. And so, and in my classroom currently, I do have a pride flag that says you are loved. So like kids have figured out that my room is like the safe room. And when I was teaching in Three Forks, my room during lunch was like where all the LGBTQIA kids would come and eat their lunch, and it was safe. And so we never talked about it, but I was like, here's a space and I will defend you from other people. Like I would have, like other kids would try and come in. I'm like, nope, out. And cause they would try and harass those kids. And I was like, no, you're not doing that. Like, I see exactly what you're doing. Get out of here. So I have it. I'm trying to think of a time when kids have come out to me, and I can't think of any. There's been a couple times where I've seen some kids either at the leadership camp that I help run or in some of those spaces where I'm like, hey, what are your pronouns? Legally can't do that anymore. But I did at this camp space, and they were like, you're the first person who's asked, thank you so much. These are my pronouns. And like, so just being able to see some kids and asking a question that no one else was asking is huge. And so like, I do a little survey at the beginning of the year where I'm like, please tell me anything that you like anonymous, like not anonymous, but like just write it on paper. I'm like, tell me anything that I can do to be a better teacher for you. And that's where some kids are like, here's this information about me.
Or I can almost see like, this is just speculation. I don't think you have answers to this, but I could almost see like if you become like an out teacher in Montana, I could see kids taking a liking to you or gravitating toward you. Maybe if they don't even know yet that they're not straight. You know what I mean? But just like kind of feel this like connection with you almost in a way that's and they may express it as like, oh, Mr. Murdoch, he's really cool. Like he's my favorite teacher. And then those kids 10 years down the road could be like, oh, like there's a reason I thought Mr. Murdoch was cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I imagine there's just like a presence too. Like it's kind of like things probably don't have to be said, but I imagine why there are people running around Bozeman High School that are like, you're an ally without even saying
Hmm.
anything, or them having to say anything to you. So I think that brings into a good question of like, what are things that teachers can do to be more welcoming, whether they're personally like queer in any way, but like, what's a good way to create those safe spaces for students
That's a
that either are out or aren't out or want to be
Mhm.
allies, or
That's a really
the
good
full
question.
gamut.
I think a lot of it just like, are you connected? And this just goes for any group, but like, are you connecting with your kids? Like, are you trying to get to know them as a person? Like, creating a safe space is not groundbreaking in the fact that it's like, are you making sure that they feel seen and heard in your class? Like, you're just asking how they are. I'm sure people listening might be like, okay, great. That's like not riveting information at all. But there are so many times where I think teachers, for whatever reason, forget that these kids need to feel safe in your room before they can learn from you. And so, regardless of if they're straight, not black, Latino, whatever it is, like they need to know that you care about them and see them for who they are.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just getting to know your kids and asking how they are, doing all the little things. Beyond that, more LGBTQ specific, I think that, and this gets really hard because there are currently laws being passed across states that make it illegal for you to use the pronouns that are not on their birth certificate or not call them the name that's on their birth certificate. If you do know, you're supposed to tell their parents. Like that's all stuff that's coming up. So it's like it's getting harder to be an ally for students in some ways in some places. So I would say like trying to use gender neutral language when you can. Like when I address my class, I say folks. Someone tried to tell me one
Yeah.
time that that refers to old people, you shouldn't use that, it's ageist, and I'm like, that's silly, so I'm gonna keep using folks. So if someone says that to me, I'm just like, that's silly. Anyway, folks, people, I don't say friends because I'm like, I'm not your friend. I think that's just kind of like addressing them in a way that like that kid, the one or two kids that you'll have that are trans will be like, I see the language you're using, like cool, I feel seen in just even the slightest of ways,
Yeah.
right? And so
Mhm.
just trying to change your language just a little bit if you can. I think in social studies is a little bit easier, but also a little bit harder. Like if you can throw in some little like, oh, did you know that Isaac Newton was gay? And kids are like, what? And you're just like dropping some information. Fun fact, he was. Every time he and a roommate, like one of his roommates left, he would burn everything in their dorm room. That is a breakup. Anyway,
That's we call that
yep,
breakup.
yep. So just sprinkling in some like inclusive history of like factual inclusive history, and kids are like, I see you. I see like you see me. And so, but all that's really good stuff just for an inclusive classroom for everyone, which again is there's so much backlash from state and federal level about inclusivity. Like the teacher in Idaho who had a poster outside a room that said all are welcome, and she was forced to take that down, which you're literally saying not everyone's welcome. That one gets there. I believe in there's a lot of areas of gray in things. That one is black or white, like
Yeah.
yeah.
This isn't even like a queer question, I feel like, but like, what are some ways that just like students of today like surprise you? Or like, what is something just like different that like just like wasn't there when we were in school?
Granted, I grew up in a one-room schoolhouse, middle school, and then high school is a little bit larger, but it is. I have a lot of students who are out, and I
Yeah.
cannot fathom. Like I'm just like that is not something I ever imagined for myself or really
Yeah.
I don't want to say see in my lifetime, but like it still shocks me all the time because
Yeah.
that was just
Same.
not necessarily an option for me. Like I knew one kid from a rival high school that was out in high school and like that was incredible to me. And so just seeing how many kids are out who are proudly trans, like that is incredible. And so I kind of think that this at this moment in time, like that's incredible because while it wasn't necessarily safe for us to be out, like I think these kids are even having a harder time because you're being debated about every day by politicians. Whereas not to say that
Yeah.
our generation and the ones previously, like they were up against a lot of stuff, very hard, very extreme. But you are now like a daily news talking point today. Whereas I think back then it was like this would come up. There are different points in time where it was probably more common, but to be a talking point in a bad way. But I think to be a young person, to know your identity, and then to see your identity weaponized right in front of you at this scale has to be really hard. But
I haven't really thought of it in that way of being like, it's got to be easier to be out and gay in high school now, which I imagine it is easier, or at least like more widely visible
Mhm.
and happening. But I've never thought about that way where like we kind of got to sit there quietly closeted and like mind our business in a way. Like I'm sure, yes, there were rumors. I'm sure, yeah, but once you like give this thing a name, it like doesn't exist. But I can't imagine sitting there in high school and having like my existence and how I
Yeah.
was born like debated every day. Like
Right.
granted, we have that all the time.
Yeah.
Like the classic like gay marriage, will they, won't they repeal it, whatever. But it's like we're adults with experience and self-esteem and ego, and we're not also battling being a teenager at the same time. And I can't imagine what that would be like to also layer that on top.
Yeah.
Or just even that, like you saying that, I've not thought of that either. Just even the concept of like sitting there and as decisions are being made or as things are changing, all of these people, all your classmates then being like, oh, yep, and that's so and so. And just like just knowing that is
Yep.
and it's like a whole nother layer of visibility that's like not necessarily positive visibility in that way. That's interesting. Yeah.
And on the positive side, and again, like I don't want to minimize anything that we or our forerunners had of what they were up against, because that was pretty insurmountable. But I just think to be a kid already trying to figure out who you are and your belonging, to then have that put on blast by politicians and other people, like that would feel really big. But on the flip side too, with seeing all of that, I think what's really exciting for kids right now, for queer kids, is that they have way more connection to community than we ever had.
Yeah.
They can watch the videos,
Totally.
they can reach out to GLAAD, to all these other support systems, and see people living a full visible life. So I think that's what's really exciting to me, is that I don't think, not to speak for you guys, but I never got to imagine what my life would look like outside of a straight path, right? Marry woman, have kids, all that. And so I think, and that was the reason I remember crying to myself, like literally breaking down, sobbing, being like, what does my future look like? What is going to happen? And so I think kids get to imagine what their life could be like in a way that
they have examples, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're
like Tyler and I talk about all the time, like we just had no examples. Like there was no like successful gay men, successful gay relationships, and
or
like, they were
upperclassmen.
unsuccessful.
Like if you're
They
in a high
didn't
school,
exist. Like they weren't there. There was nothing there, so it was like not even a possibility.
And if they were also probably in hiding and trying to protect themselves too, like
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I had a class. There was no one out in my high school, and I had a classmate that was outed. Like developed a crush on someone else in our class and was outed, and it was bad. It was a big deal.
That's rough. So, and I think the thing that inspires me about the youth of today is like they are pushing, they are fighting. They're like, no, this is who I am, and because that's like the big talking point of like kids don't know, and I'm like, no, you do. Like, when did you ever have to ask yourself if you were straight? When did you ever ask? Like, I asked my dad. We were talking about he was debating trans rights. I was being like, no, this is not a debate. Anyway, but he was like, well, how do you know you're not trans? I'm like, because I'm cisgender. He's like, what the fuck is cisgender? And I was like, so you're trying to have this argument and you don't even know all the things. And that's, again, not his fault.
Yeah.
I was like, why would you ever have known that word until I explained it to you? So I did. And he was like, oh. I was like, so when did you know that you were a man aligned with your what you got going on under that tarp there? Like, it's, people don't ask themselves these questions. And it's like, yeah, you always knew. Like, I always knew, even though I was like, nope, don't let anybody else know that.
Yeah.
So I think it's really exciting to see kids knowing who they are and defending that. And that rhetoric of, yeah, kids don't know. I'm like, they do know. They have the agency to figure that out. So
yeah. And I think the community thing is huge. This would never be me, but not to give social media some props, because I do think it is killing us all slowly.
Correct.
I do think there are some pieces where, especially in places like rural Montana, where like you don't know anyone else in a queer community, or maybe you know a few people, but it's really small. But like there's so much media like available, and just like TV shows and entertainment and movies and like really good, well produced, diverse and complex gay characters or queer characters that I think are so much more relatable than anything that we had access to. And like that comes with the dark side, because the box is open. So like you see everything.
Yeah, I feel like you got hardened younger.
Yeah.
As a teacher, what are some of the things that you just like wish parents and adults and people understood about LGBTQ students?
Perfect. I'm going to hold people's hands while I say this. No one can make your kid queer. Nothing. If that is how it worked, how would any of us exist?
All three of us would be straight. We would be straight men with wives and children.
Correct. And it's there was no queer representation where I grew up, in a tiny little town of 25 people with like, we were outnumbered by cows. Like that, if you can be swayed into something, yeah, none of us would exist as gay men.
Right.
So like, representation will not make your kid this thing. Your kid was either always that thing, or they're just going to be an ally. And then that becomes the real big question of, what are you scared of? Your kid supporting people who are different than them?
Yeah.
I have a really hard stance on this one. So
It should be.
yeah, and that's a bigger conversation. Is parents are pushing back against inclusive education of all different groups of people, and it's like,
Yeah.
so what are you scared of? Like, why don't you want your kid to be a better, more inclusive, more rounded person? And especially from a religious context, like, God said to love everybody. He'll sort out everything else. Like,
Yeah.
you're called to love, and you're not doing that if you don't want your kid to learn about different groups of people. Like, that's it. I thought I had more. I don't know actually if I do, but like, that's.
Well, I'm curious on that too, because I feel like I want to know if, when the rubber meets the road in your experience of working with parents, if like what we're like, Tyler and I are not parents. We like live close to a school, but I haven't seen or talked to a child in years. Just kidding. We have lots of nephews and nieces. But I'm curious on like if that's the noise and that's what the media is producing, and that's what's saying like, this is the opinion of parents these days. But I also just like, with the parents that we know and the people that are millennials that are raising kids that are approaching like anywhere from like 0 to 10, like that is not the mentality that we see.
Yep.
But granted, we live in Seattle, but also we have so many friends that still live in Montana, that are raising their kids in Montana, that like very much welcome and opening. They like, take this little guy, person, whoever, and teach them what I knew nothing about, because I am not the expert. You know what I mean? Like I feel like our personal experience is a lot of that with the parents that we know, of relying so heavily on teachers and educators to be that, like, not necessarily talking about like queerness or things like that, but just be that person that's like, just like I'm not the math expert, I'm not the social studies expert. That's why I send them to you. Like,
Yep. And
so I don't know. Like, it seems like it's noise that's created from the far right of like parents' rights and things like that. But I'm curious if what you actually experience, if like that's all what your parents are saying, is like, make sure you don't say gay.
So with that, I'm trying to think where I want to start this. There is definitely a movement of parents out there who want more control of what's going on in the classroom.
Yeah.
I think that is probably a smaller group that is just really loud.
Yeah, like are they just the loudest?
I think it's a smaller group that's just the loudest. I'm sure there are other teachers who might say different. So, but I will say, in my experience, I've experienced both, where I've taught certain lessons on certain topics, and I've gotten some pretty nasty emails being like, why are you teaching this? How does this fit into your curriculum and whatnot? And so I've had to have larger discussions with parents like that, which, to be fair, I love an engaged parent to a degree, because I'm like, you should be invested in what your kid is learning. And I actually put it in my syllabus where I'm like, I tell my kids, I'm like, you should be going to your parents and talking about what you learned. Like, make them a part of your learning process. And I tell parents, I'm like, you should be asking this question at the dinner table. What did you learn today? And that's a great opportunity, because I remember my parents, who were very conservative, when I went home and I had some very liberal teachers, my parents would be like, oh, we don't agree with that, but like, that's interesting. And that was it. They would never have gone to the schoolhouse and been like, how dare you? Because I think my parents trusted me to form my own opinion. And that's what I've said to some parents who are so against certain things. And again, it's only been a few of them. But I look at them, I'm like, so you don't trust your kid. You don't trust that you have taught your child is the right thing, like the morals and the values that you've taught them. And you're so scared of what you believe that it's not right, that you have to protect them from everything else. And so that's why I just try and say, I'm like, you should trust your kid. They're going to make the right choice. Either I'm like, I see them for an hour a day. I cannot change their mind. I can't make them this. I can't make them that. So there's that. But then also at the same time, I've had parent pushback, but at the same time, there's a law in Montana where if you're going to be talking about sex, gender, or sexual orientation, you have to send a letter home. It was 48 hours. Now it is 5 days in advance. They changed the law. They added to it. But you have to send a letter home. Only if it's about queer people or anything like that. Not if like you're like, oh, Martha Washington. Well, why is Martha Washington important? We don't have to talk about that because she's straight. Anyway, it's double standard, but whatever. Part of me, if I had more time, I'd be sending letters home about everything, because then I would just be maliciously complying. Anyway, I remember sending these letters home a couple of different times when like we were going to watch something that included, like, it was like a movie that is historically accurate that involves a gay character. I'd have to send a letter home. And I remember multiple parents emailing me back being like, that is so shitty that you have to do that. Just show the video. Show like they're like that's stupid.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't, as long as they're not watching an R-rated movie, I don't give a shit. Like, and so that's the thing is a lot of parents, like, they see it and they're like, this is dumb. This is an overreach. I trust you. So as much as there's a group of people, circling back to the original question, as much as there are a group of people who are loud and wanting more control in the classroom, there's an equal number of people who are like, yeah, I trust this. This is fine. And I think the other thing too is there's so much fear mongering that's been going on of like, oh, they're making kids trans. I'm like, how? We barely have funding to get books and Chromebooks for stuff and like get paid. We do not have funding for operation tables in school. Like that's just not happening. And that's the thing is when people are like, oh, they're gonna make the kids gay. They're gonna make kids transgender. I'm like, it's just the next logical question of like, okay, we barely have funding for this. How is that happening? Where is it happening? And that's the thing is like, no one is telling kids how to, I shouldn't say no one. There is probably a person out there who's like, if you wanted to transition, here's how you do it. That's not happening in mass to where it needs to be a federal government conversation. Right? Like and it was probably a teacher trying to answer a question. I remember when this bill came out, the 48 hours rule, when I was teaching in Three Forks, our district, we had a district-wide meeting, all the teachers are there, and we were talking about that bill and how our school board had adopted a policy that mirrored it basically. And she was like, you need to tell parents if you're going to be having any of these conversations. And the way the law is written is it is so vague. We now understand that like, if you're introducing the information, you have to do the work to send the letter home and all that. But if a kid comes to you and asks a question, it's relatively fine. But it's still a super gray area. So you're like, I don't know if I want to answer that. But I remember at the time when it was super still gray area, I looked at our superintendent and I was like, hey, 2 days ago, there was a kid in this class who asked me like 2 days prior, who said, they asked me about Pride. They were like, why is there a Pride month and not a straight month? Which is a great question because
Classic question.
But as a young child, why? And history informs us. So I was like, that's a great question, buddy. It's because of history. It's because people get fired for no reason. It's because all of these reasons, right? The reason that we have Pride is not to throw a big party. It's to remember everything we fought for, right? And throw a big party. Why not? Two things at once. And so explaining that, he actually looked at me. He's like, that actually makes a lot of sense because straight people have never gone through that. And I was like, ding, 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 we have a winner. And so I said that to my superintendent. I'm like, if that happens again, what do you want me to do? And she said, avoid, evade, don't answer. And I was like, cool. So a kid is coming to their social studies teacher to ask them a question about society, about history, and you want me to shut up. That's great. So we don't believe in education then.
Yeah. Oh my God, Wyatt, that makes me want to scream. This is why I couldn't have never done it. Because I would have walked into the school board meeting and been like, first off, it's probably gonna be my last day and I don't care. And y'all are fucking idiots. Like, you're so dumb. But also it hasn't, that part, I will say from my dad's experience, that's always existed.
Right.
Like, my dad was very much the village liberal of Stevensville. And he was very much just like everything ahead. He was always just kind of 10 years ahead of everyone else with things like gay marriage and things just like modern things that were and he grew up in the South.
Okay.
So was very, very familiar with segregation and just very much Civil War history and things like that. Also was a history teacher. But my dad would write letters to the editor all the time and always be in trouble with the school board, and they'd haul him into the school board and he would then talk about the importance of the freedom of speech, and then he would push the envelope. I think what we're seeing now is teachers are just so restricted to do that, to actually do education and actually just expose kids so that they then can determine they can you're not sitting there learning how to be trans or learning how to be gay. You're just learning how to intake information and critically think about it to form an opinion and your own experience and your own identity.
Right.
It's just, how do you do, my question, why is how do you do it every day? What in a world right now where being a teacher is the most selfless job I think you could have, because you're not paid adequately, right? You should be paid like NBA players and you're not. People never do public funding for any sort of any mill levy or anything for school. They pass occasionally for sure, and people definitely believe in education. But then they're like, let's pull music, let's pull education, let's pull everything and just make sure they're learning the math. And I just as a teacher and as honestly a very, from what I know, very positive, gold-hearted person.
Thank you.
What about teaching is this is why I do it. And have you had any of those moments in your experience teaching. Like,
Yeah. And
you are just doing the Lord's work.
thank
Wyatt.
you.
And like anytime I meet a teacher, it's like I just want to hug them and be like, "Thank you,
You
keep
should.
going.
You should.
I
Yeah.
support you, and I will pay more taxes."
And that's the tricky part is like some areas are better than others. And it comes down to like, do you want your kid to be learning? Because if you're not voting for increased funding, your kid, it's ultimately your kid that suffers.
Right.
Quick segue on that. But then I think to your question of like, how do I do it every day? There's been plenty of times, especially in some previous years, where I was like, I don't know why I do this. Like, I don't know. There were some days that were really, really hard where I was like, I always said, it feels like I'm punching a river. Like it's just endless.
Yeah.
But then with everything going on currently, while that could be super, super depressing and soul crushing, everyone I've talked to that's not a teacher, like all my friends they're asking, what do I do? Like, how can I get involved? How do I
Yeah.
have meaning that's impacting the world around me in a way that feels like I'm affecting something, especially towards like the arc of justice. And in that moment, when some of my friends like said that to me, I heard it as a common thread. I sat back and reflected, and I was like, oh, that's my whole job. Like I am in some way making someone else's life better every day. I'm giving kids tools, even if it's not like I'm raising everyone to be the kindest people ever. Like that's just not going to be the case, right? But I am giving a kid tools to understand the world around them. I'm teaching them critical thinking skills. I do get to like be like, hey, here's this fun historical fact that you may never have heard of it. It's super important to like what's going on right now. I feel like my job is activism, which I feel like someone could use the soundbite to be like, look at what teachers are doing. But it is, I'm trying to make the world a better place to where we're at the bare minimum tolerant of each other, which is should not be the bar, but it is. And so I feel like every day I get to do really meaningful work, even if that's just helping a kid learn to read, because that still happens in high school where kids are like, I don't know how to read. And I'm like, dear God, okay. So that's that too. But my job has been so soul filling for me. And like, I remember different points in my life where the things I have learned as a teacher help me navigate like some really deep personal things as well, like being able to critically think, to not put up with bullshit, to handle different groups of people. Like I am so grateful for my job. And I think it's not teaching isn't the reason why I teach. There's a thing called the infinite cause where it's like this thing that outlives you. It's a bigger calling that other people are called to as well. And so like mine is making the world a better place and helping other people. And I'm like, I could do that in so many different ways. Luckily, teaching just happens to be the one I'm really good at and love. So I always remind myself that when I'm like, wow, this really sucks and I could do anything else.
Yeah.
And I'm choosing to do this. So yeah, I'm really lucky to feel that way. But yeah, I'm just really grateful for that.
Yeah. I just imagine too, like why, like we can all three think of like there are so many. I feel like there are teachers that I had growing up that I'm sure very much were like, that is a gay kid. You know what I mean? And like they were very much probably my biggest ally without ever saying anything. It was just like this approachability, this like willingness and openness for me to ask them questions about anything and just like being there to relate to people and children and teenagers at like one of the hardest periods of life for anyone, especially someone who was growing up queer, especially someone who's growing up queer in rural areas or small towns for sure. But I know that you're that person for so many people that you don't even know it because it's not even, it can't be spoken out loud. So there's like a million teachers that I would like go back and like thank, because I'm sure Tyler has them too. But
anyone listening,
they're
go
just
back
so
and thank your
crucial.
teachers. It means a lot. I just got to see my 7th grade teacher when I was in Minneapolis and like had breakfast with her.
Yeah.
And it made her whole day. So like go thank your teachers if you can. Just to that point that you're making. So
yeah. One question I just thought of that we forgot to talk about. In your experience, and maybe this is different depending upon where you teach, what is like the current state of teaching queer history?
Ooh, illegal? No, just kidding. It's
because like I don't remember. I remember like lightly talking about it. Like my dad definitely. So the thing when, as I'm sure you know, being a teacher's kid, like when you're in a small town in Stevensville, like you're gonna have your parent as your teacher. It's like common. So, but I remember like my dad's sociology class, we covered homosexuality. Like there was a whole segment probably for like, I mean, I don't remember if it was like one day or like 2 or 3 days. And I remember talking about like queer history lightly and just like the AIDS crisis, but like people just were like, back then it wasn't like this hot issue. It was like, yes, this is the thing that happened. Here's what happened. So like people didn't get all up in arms like they do now. So I'm curious about like if we're at a state where we truly just don't talk about that or cover that.
It's one of those things that like I remember not real like I'm trying to remember if I learned about the AIDS crisis in high school and I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
Like learning about the pink
I
triangle,
didn't.
couldn't tell you. Lavender scare, couldn't tell you. And so it wasn't until
Yep.
college and even in some of those classes like that wasn't brought up. It was because I as a gay man started to learn more and get involved in organizations. I was like, "Oh my god,
Yep.
like this is whole history here," which I think is the push towards inclusive history is all these groups like when you start to learn more about your own people, you're like, why is no one talking about this? You know? And so people are like, well, everyone's just offended. I'm like, we're offended by the fact that you've omitted from the story.
Yeah.
That's what we're offended by. We're also offended by the atrocities, but we're not asking for an apology to her. We're asking you to talk about what happened that has led us to this current moment in time. So I
Right.
try to, that's a little too far from your question, but I always just try and center it
That's
in
fine.
facts of like, this is what happened. History, I have a sticker on my laptop that says, history doesn't need your permission. I also
Yeah.
like, history
Yeah,
doesn't
that's a
care
good
about your
one.
feelings. Like, and there's this whole group of people that are being like, well, it should be facts over feelings. I'm like, okay, here are the facts. Like, here's what happened. I'm sorry that you don't like talking
Yeah.
about this group. That sucks. Get uncomfortable because
Yep.
that's how we learn. So it's,
Yep.
to me, it's super important that we talk about it, but it is so hard to currently with just, there are plenty of parents who are like, great, that's awesome that my kid knows about this. There's also a good number who are like, my kid will not know about this. Or they don't want their kid to know about it. And so I try to teach it from a really fact-based perspective where if parents do want to come at me, it's just
Yeah.
like, it relates to this lesson because we're talking about the Red Scare, and we can't really talk about the Red Scare if we don't talk about the Lavender Scare either. And so when I talk about the Holocaust, here are all the groups that the Nazis targeted. That's relevant, right? Like all of these groups were targeted. And
Yeah.
so I think the state of queer theory, at least in social studies, is you need to play your cards very carefully, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But so
I just remember I was like my dad, similar quote, like his in his classroom was like the sum of all history equals today. And
Ooh, I
it's
like
like I always like I kind of knew what it meant, but like the older you get, you're just like why wasn't I should have fucking paid attention more. Like I just like and it's infuriating because it's just like I love that you're like history does not need your permission. Like,
yeah. And to be fair, I stole that from another teacher who has this like whole account.
fine,
But
it's great.
But yeah, it's how I
Yeah.
look at history of like it is factual, and we're always finding more information that gives us because history is made of stories. There's no singular story because that would just be one piece of evidence, which is not enough to create an actual account, right? Like or a fuller story of
Right.
history. And that's what we're doing today. That's why we're kind of going back and being like, okay, we have this one person's narrative who's probably a white man. Now let's find these 5 other people who are from very different socioeconomic and race backgrounds, and it's going to give us a fuller story of what was going on.
Right.
And I think too, to the question of what inspires me about kids today is that the same day when I was told don't teach that lesson again, we've already had all these parent phone calls. The next period of kids that came in were expecting it because I have it written out on my board what we're doing for the week, and they knew we were talking about the pink triangle. So when they walked in, they were like stoked to learn. They wanted to know what that was because I didn't give them any information on it. And so when they walked in, they were like, okay, what are we learning about this today? And I was like, actually, no, I was told that I should not be teaching that. So we're just going to be reading from the textbook. And kids were pissed. Kids who were even probably a little bit more to the conservative side because they were like, what do you mean you're not going to tell us this information? And I was like, well, my slides are posted online. I already uploaded them. So if you want to go look at them, you can. They didn't even crack a textbook. They all went online and they were like, we're learning about this. And that's the thing is like, why are you trying to isolate your kids from reality, from history? You're not protecting them. You're making them mad.
Yeah.
First of all, because tell a kid that they can't do something, they're going to do it. Teenagers 101. But it was so cool to see their curiosity, even if it was something they probably didn't agree with. They were like, no, I'm going to learn about this. Like, you're not going to hide shit from me. So that was cool.
And it's like you have this whole and they all have full access to the internet with zero safety restrictions. So like don't you want some sort of persons with a license and an education and a certification
Who can be held accountable
guide
if
them
they
with
do
that
something
and give them
wrong?
the critical thinking skills to navigate through that information?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
It drives me nuts. This is why I can't move back because I would be a fucking school board's nightmare.
You should move back. We need more school board nightmares.
I would be like, you're a dipshit. You barely passed math class. I remember you.
Yep.
Why are you? Who put you here?
Yeah. And it's
No.
And again, the goal is like the more kids understand about the world, the more compassionate they are, the kinder they are. And I think that I said it earlier, but like that boils down to if you don't want your kids to learn about these things, you're setting them up for failure, and you're not making kinder people.
And also, it's like the importance of not letting it repeat
Correct.
itself. It's like they're like, well, why do we need to know about that? That was a dark time. And it's like, because we're trying to stop the government from paying for people's prep. But then we have to remember that thousands and thousands of men died in the 80s while the president didn't fucking say shit. So that's why we have to learn about it.
And then I think,
and here we are, not that much later, being like, what happened again?
History is just a flat circle. Like, it doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. Like, there's all these cliches, but it's like people are not learning from the things that we did. Or what makes me the most nervous is that we are learning, but people don't care because they're like, it's not me. It's not my group.
Exactly.
And that's the thing that I'm like, but this is something I said at the leadership camp I help run. I'm like, if we're not building a world based on inclusion where everyone is allowed to be, then we are making a world based on exclusion. And that could happen to anybody.
Right.
If you want to protect yourself, include everybody. But if you're not, then you're also going to be on the chopping block at some point.
Yep. They just work their way up the list.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you, Wyatt. Again, this was really great to connect with you. And again, you are just doing the work.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate that.
Any way that we can help or support or do, just let us know. Again, you are just doing the work.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate that.
Any way that we can help or support or do, just let us know. And we'll keep in touch. And I want to also, I'm hoping we get some really good letters too. And people writing in that are either maybe teachers or kids, students. We get people to write into us all the time.
That's awesome.
If we get any Wyatt though, we'll send them your way. I'm sure you'd be more than happy to answer.
Cool.
So.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay.
Cool. Thanks, Wyatt.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, Wyatt. Good
Stay
to
in
talk to you.
touch.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Okay. Well, that was a really good one. Wyatt was expected doing the work.
Yeah, it's good to hear from him. I've obviously we haven't kept really close in touch or haven't really kept in touch since, but I was sitting there being like, when I asked about his coming out story, it kind of hit me at that time just based on where we both were and us both being RAs. I was like, I bet it's about the same timeline.
Right. Do you want to tell the listeners how your afternoon was, what you did?
Sure. So if I'm on a work trip and time allows, I love to hit one of the big amusement parks that I've not gotten to go to growing up or didn't get to go to. And so I am currently in Ohio. So I went to Kings Island late this afternoon, hit up some big roller coasters.
He texted me today and he goes, hey, sorry, I'm at Kings Island. And I think he expects me to know what that is. And I'm like, what is Kings Island?
You did that.
Is
You
it,
didn't know
like,
at
really
all
well
what that
known?
was? I mean, I guess probably not. I guess if you know
in Ohio to me, the big one is don't tell me. The big one is Cedar Farms.
Close.
Cedar Springs?
Close. Are you doing that on
Is
purpose?
it Cedar?
It is Cedar.
No. Why the fuck?
It's
did I
the
not
roller
remember
coaster
it?
capital
Cedar.
of the world.
I know. That's the only one I've ever heard of. And clearly not, because I can't remember it.
It's Cedar Point.
Hollow. Cedar Point.
It's Cedar Point, Ohio. But I am in Cincinnati / Kings Island is in Mason, Ohio. A little bit out of Cincinnati. Technically,
Is it an island?
No. So it was amazing. I already told you this,
You
but
can do your next solo episode when I'm on a work trip. You can cover the intersectionality between gays and roller coasters.
that and airplanes. Those are like my three that they're all there.
Yep. Airports, airplanes.
I did
You
save.
kind of are you really are the trifecta.
I did save a life today. The first roller coaster I went on was like a gigantic roller coaster that the big drop was like 300 feet, went 91 miles per hour. And about 2/3 through the
Wow.
roller coaster, I'm second to last row, and I see sunglasses go flying from like the second row, flying and bounce off and hit and stick for a second on like 2 rows in front of me, and then fly again and smacked the harness that was sitting next to me. And I grabbed him and I saved him and I gave him to the girl.
Wait, so
The whole plane, the whole train was
lost?
flapping.
Wait, when it happened or afterwards? Like, did anyone know that you caught them?
Yes. Yes. Everybody, me, my row, and the row behind me were all like, holy shit, I can't believe you just caught those. And then when we got off, I walked to the front. I was like, sunglasses, whose sunglasses flew off? And this girl was like, oh my God, mine. And then everybody started clapping. It was funny.
Okay, well, I miss you. As listeners can tell, we are apart. Tyler's on a work
know.
trip.
It is
And I'm
midnight
home
here,
on the
but I am
4th.
getting on a plane to come home in about 7 hours. So,
And we're headed to Montana.
Mhm.
So it's family weeks at the lake. So I'm sure we'll do a recap on that on one of our next episodes. So excited to go back so
Mhm.
soon. So Okay, well, White was great as anticipated. I just like who my like top teachers out there that I can think of. I want to give a big shout out to
Ah,
Mrs. Jones. She only taught for a few years. She was my kindergarten teacher, and that reason was because she had triplets. Like when she was kindergarten, when I was in first grade, she had triplets.
oh my God.
Like organically.
Oh my God.
Can you
No,
imagine?
I can't.
So I want to shout out to her, Mrs. Davis, Mrs. Omlin. Like there were so many, like Mrs. Gallick, like literally every one of my elementary school teachers, I think was just like an ally that was like, I think there's something going on here. My music teacher, Mrs. Rosen, like all of them. So
I had a bunch too.
just like I cannot, yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I just like if you are a teacher and you're a listener, I cannot begin to tell you how like we appreciate you and just like I think you're just the most underappreciated. And like I don't know, we need like an award ceremony where we all send you on a free trip to Bermuda
Yeah.
for 3 months, all expenses paid.
I had like, if I think back, I had a few teachers that I think kind of like I was pretty quiet at certain times in my school days, and I had some teachers that I think like saw something in me in terms of just being like a student and just kind of plucked me out of like obscurity and just like paid attention to me. Not necessarily, some of them not necessarily in the clear sense. I did have one. My 7th grade English teacher was named Shauna Goodman, and she was originally from Seattle, was a model in a former life. And she I think like when I think like little queer ally teacher, she saw that in me, like was so kind to me. She asked me to be her teacher's aide. It was a really big deal. She was like a really fun teacher. And and she asked me like to be one of her tutors. It was a huge deal. Like who was Mrs. Goodwin going to choose to be her teacher's aide? Because she would take her 7th graders, and then when you're in 8th grade, you could be a teacher's aide for teachers. And she would choose like 2 of her students in 7th grade to be her the aides the next year. And she chose me. But she's the immediate one that comes out to like steps out of my mind that I'm like, I know she knew what was going on and just like kind of like nurtured that a little bit. Shauna Goodman, Mrs. Goodman would be mine.
Well,
Yay.
I'm excited to see you tomorrow. Really quick, do you have a song of the week for our listeners?
The song that I listened to 4 times in a row today is not a new song, but you know the song "Past Life" by Ariana Grande. Of course you don't. It is on her deluxe. So her latest album is called, say it with me,
Afterlife, Evanescence,
Eternal Sunshine.
into space, Eternal Sunshine of the.
Just Eternal Sunshine, nothing past that.
Okay.
And then she released a deluxe later, Eternal Sunshine, Brighter Days Ahead, and it is a deluxe track. It is, in my opinion, one of the strongest deluxe pop albums we've gotten in a long time. Like all 5 tracks on the deluxe, amazing, unreal. No notes, just gorgeous.
Amazing.
Yeah. Past Life though, it's so good. It's the one that goes, always wonder what would happen if I let you lose me. You know?
Okay, gotcha. The one that's in my rotation though that keeps coming up, not keeps coming up, but since Lex and Malay, the whole thing that they sent, what was it called? What's that called? The Mandela effect? Mandela. I'm having it right now about the
Mandela.
Thing. Is it Mandela? Mandela effect. Anyways, it's the hold me now. That song. I could have sworn that song was called 6 Feet from the Edge.
Me
Did you think that
too? 6. I would have settled at 6 feet. I thought maybe it was called 6 feet. I can't even tell you. What is it actually?
It's called One More Breath.
One More Breath.
And because he's got one more breath before he, anyways, I listened to it 3 times in a row in the car yesterday just to do some practicing because I know I went to karaoke earlier. And then I think it is going to be one of my surf songs for Lake Week. And also I'm thinking maybe I workshopped it with Ariel a little bit about talking about it, but I am thinking I can bid it hard enough that it can make it a successful karaoke song. I just need to be able to sing it okay enough. So that's where I'm currently at in my journey.
You're gonna have to develop some growl in your voice, some grit and some growl.
Yeah, but I think you can, but you can also go with the creed of it, and that almost doesn't need the growl.
What is the creed of it?
The creed of it.
What is that?
It's like the Shakira of it, like Creed and Shakira, like they're a Venn diagram, like this, like that.
Remember Natalie? Remember our friend Natalie would do higher? Is that Creed too? Can you take me higher?
See, like I think
you're doing
really
it. You're doing it.
Exaggerate. Yeah, like I think like people will be like,
yeah, I would be good.
Tops off. So anyways, I'm gonna workshop that, but we'll see. But it's coming to a boombox near you. Yeah,
I love
that
that.
song really
A
is
little
a good
guitar
tune.
riff.
Okay, well, as always, listeners, please write in. Wyatt was someone we knew in college, and he was a little bit younger than me and probably about the same age as Tyler, but he just is really an insightful,
Yeah.
cool, small town kid that I'm so excited for him and where he ended up in life because he's right where he needs to be for so many people.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely write in. As always, you can find us at No Gays in Montana on all socials or email us at nogaysinmontana@gmail.com.
Bye. Holding now.
I'm 6 feet from the edge and I'm thinking. Like, I think I can do it.
Okay. Bye.